I found my wife's old diary. She wrote about wanting to marry 3 different men, and realizing I was husband number 2 broke me in a way I never expected. I don't know what exactly led me to open that forgotten old box in the back corner of our bedroom closet that afternoon. Maybe it was simple boredom. Maybe a sudden wave of curiosity. Or maybe, deep down, some instinct knew I was about to discover something that would change everything. We had been married for just under 4 years, and until that moment, I thought I knew who Claire truly was. I met her at a friend's 4th of July barbecue, and right away, she had this unique glow about her. Charming, beautiful, and a little bit offbeat in a way that pulled you in without trying. Her quirks weren't annoying, they were enchanting. We moved fast, perhaps recklessly so. Just 6 months after meeting, we got engaged. Another 6, we were husband and wife. Claire had always felt a little mysterious, but never in a way that felt malicious. It was more like she had a poetic darkness inside her, like a character pulled from the pages of a novel. She was the kind of woman who lit incense just because the house felt too quiet, wore vintage dresses with no occasion, and filled journals with doodles, fragments of poetry, and quotes on sticky notes left all over our bookshelves. There was a depth to her that seemed infinite, like she'd lived many lives before this one. I thought I was lucky, no blessed, to call her mine. We lived in a cozy suburban home in Colorado. I worked as a software engineer, quiet and grounded. She was a part-time yoga instructor and ran an art blog on the side, floating through life with grace. We didn't have kids, though the topic had come up here and there, hovering between us like something fragile neither one wanted to press on too hard. That weekend, Claire had gone to Seattle to visit her sister. I stayed back, taking advantage of the quiet time to clean and declutter. That's how I ended up in the guest room closet, sorting through boxes that had been there since we first moved in. Most were labeled with her handwriting. One box, marked college stuff, caught my attention. I expected maybe old notebooks, photos, a few tattered books she couldn't part with. What I didn't expect was the heavy, leather-bound diary buried beneath a stack of dusty sketch pads and a broken Polaroid camera. It wasn't locked. And I know what you're thinking. You shouldn't read someone's private thoughts. And you're right. But something about holding that diary sent a strange chill down my spine. It was like it was waiting for me. So I opened it. The first pages were innocuous, scribbled poems, bits of song lyrics, a hilarious rant about a college roommate who kept stealing her shampoo. But then, several pages in, I found an entry that froze me in place. It read, "One of my lifelong goals is to marry at least 3 men. Not just date them, marry them. I want to experience love in different forms, different lives. I want to be someone's wife, then someone else's, and then another. Maybe then I'll know who I really am." I read that line over and over, hoping I had misunderstood. My chest tightened with a heavy pressure that made it hard to breathe. At first, I tried to convince myself it was some kind of metaphor, a creative writing exercise or a piece of satire. But as I turned the pages, more entries repeated the same idea. She had outlined each marriage as if it were a spiritual journey. The first would give her stability. The second, adventure. The third, reflection and wisdom. An emotional bucket list. A blueprint for love that had nothing to do with commitment and everything to do with personal evolution. That's when it hit me. I was her second husband. She'd mentioned briefly once that she had been married before. A short, youthful marriage that ended quickly. I had never pressed for details. I thought I was being respectful. But now, reading these pages, I couldn't help but wonder. If I was number 2, was number 3 already waiting in the wings? Was I just a chapter in some story she had already drafted in her mind? That night, I sat at the edge of our bed holding that diary like it was something poisonous. The life I thought we were building together felt like a lie. I could still hear her voice echoing in my head. The way she'd laugh, kiss me, say I love you with such warmth. But now it all felt like a script. I didn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. When she came home the next day, I didn't say anything. I helped her unload her bags, watched her move around the house like everything was normal. She smiled, hugged me, kissed my cheek and said, God, I missed you. I just nodded. She looked the same, but I didn't feel the same. That night, she slept peacefully beside me while I lay awake, the diary now hidden in my backpack in the closet. By morning, I knew I had to confront her. Not with anger, not with accusations, just with the truth. At the kitchen table, she was scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee. I walked to the closet, pulled out the diary, and placed it gently on the table between us. Her smile dropped instantly. I was going through the guest room, I said calmly. I found this. I read something in it that I can't unsee. She looked at the diary like it might explode. I swallowed hard and continued. The entry about wanting to marry 3 men. Is that real? Is that still a goal? Her face went pale. She looked down and whispered, I wrote that years ago, but I'm your second, aren't I? I asked. She nodded slowly. So does that mean there's a third? There was a long, excruciating silence. I expected her to laugh it off. Blame youth. Blame naivety. But she didn't. Instead, she said quietly, I didn't expect to actually follow through with it. She looked at me with eyes that once felt like home, but now reflected a storm I never knew was brewing beneath the surface. Her voice was barely a whisper, fragile like glass on the verge of shattering. When I wrote that, I was lost. My first marriage had just fallen apart. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. So I started creating this dream, this fantasy where I could find pieces of myself in different people. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just thought maybe love could be a journey, not a destination. She looked at me then, and the depth in her eyes nearly undid me. But I never thought I'd actually fall in love again. Not like this. Not with you. Those words should have brought me comfort. But instead, they felt like a puzzle missing too many pieces. Because what did that make me? A detour? A second stop in her quest for self-discovery? My voice was unsteady as I asked the question that had been eating me alive since I read those pages. Are you still holding on to that idea, Claire? Do you still want that third husband? Her eyes began to fill with tears, and that was when I knew, even before she spoke, that the answer wasn't what I needed it to be. I don't know, she said quietly, and that one line broke something in me that I didn't even know could break. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. I just stood there, hollowed out like a shell of the man who had once felt safe in this very kitchen. You should have told me, I said softly, my voice a mix of sadness and resignation. I had the right to know I was part of a list, that our marriage might have been more of a phase than a forever. I turned, walked to the bedroom, and began packing a small bag. She didn't follow me. Maybe she knew there was nothing to say in that moment that wouldn't make it worse. I left that night with nothing but a duffel bag and 1,000 questions clawing at my mind. For 3 days, I stayed with my best friend Eric. He didn't press me for details. He just handed me a cold beer, sat on the couch next to me, and let me exist in silence. It was the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled, the kind that let you breathe when your chest felt too tight to do it alone. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of my relationship with Claire. Every laugh, every kiss, every I love you, wondering if they were real or just convincing lines in a script she'd written years before we met. She texted a few times. Then she called. I ignored the first 2, picked up the third. Her voice was shaky, desperate. Please come home, she said, just so we can talk. I didn't say yes right away, but eventually I agreed, not because I was ready to forgive, but because I needed to understand. When I walked back into our house, everything looked exactly the same, but nothing felt familiar. It was like stepping into a replica of my life, one built on a fault line I hadn't noticed until it cracked open beneath me. She was sitting on the couch, barefoot, legs curled beneath her, wearing the hoodie I thought I'd lost months ago. When she saw me, her face lit up with hope before dimming with reality. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't whole. And she knew it. I've been thinking a lot, she began slowly, about that diary, about the person I was when I wrote those words. She paused, then continued. Those entries weren't just thoughts. They were wounds. I was bleeding and I didn't know how to heal. I thought maybe if I kept reinventing myself through love, I'd find the version of me that finally felt complete. You weren't bleeding when we got married, I said, not harshly, but with a trembling kind of sadness. You were smiling. You were happy. Or so I thought. She nodded slowly, stepping closer. I thought I was healing. I thought you were the end of that journey. But when you read that entry, when you asked me if I still wanted that third marriage, I panicked, because a part of me was still holding on to that fantasy. And I didn't know how to let it go without losing who I thought I was. Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached behind the cushion of the couch and pulled out the diary. I burned the pages, she said, her voice unsteady. The ones that talked about that goal. I don't want them anymore. I don't want a third marriage. I want this one to be my last. I want you. She handed me what was left, the charred edges of a journal that had once held a dream she no longer believed in. I want to choose you every single day, not because it's a fairy tale, but because it's real, even when it's messy, even when it hurts. I sat down slowly, holding what remained of her diary like it was some ancient relic of a war we had just barely survived. I didn't marry you to be a stepping stone, I said. My voice shook as I continued. Trust is like glass. Once it cracks, you can glue it back together, but it's never going to be the same. She nodded, her eyes shining with tears. Then let's try. Let's glue it back together. Even if it's crooked. Even if it's imperfect. I'll do anything. Therapy, honesty, whatever it takes. We talked for hours that day. Sometimes we cried. Sometimes we just sat in silence, holding each other. We didn't try to win the argument. We didn't keep score. We just tried to be human, to be honest, to be us. And that was the hardest, most beautiful thing we had ever done. It's been 3 months since then. We're in couples therapy now. Some days are really hard. Some nights I still wake up wondering if she'll ever secretly crave that third marriage. If that dream still lives in some quiet, undisturbed corner of her heart. But then there are days when she looks at me like I'm the only man who's ever mattered. And on those days, I believe her. I believe us. Because the woman I'm married to today isn't the same girl who wrote those words in that diary. She's letting go of that dream. Not for me, but for herself. And maybe that's what real love looks like. So what do you think? Was I right to give her another chance? Or should I have walked away for good? If you stayed with me till the end, I appreciate you. And if this story hit home, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories that'll leave you thinking long after they're over.